Hi everyone, I'm Elspeth Jackson from Ragged Life, and I'm also the author of Rag Rugs, Pillows and More. And today I'm going to be teaching you how to do the traditional loopy style of rag rugging, which is sometimes called hooky rag rugging. And I'm going to be showing you how to do it using a rug hook. And first, before we get going, this is a little bit of what loopy rag rugging looks like on a larger scale. So you can see a couple of my rugs here. Hopefully some of you find it quite nice. It's quite neat, gives you a really flat pictorial effect of rag rugging. So, getting going. So the first part of the process of loopy rag rugging is always to prep your fabric. So I'm using some fabric offcuts here, but you can use old clothing, patchworking remnants, anything you can find around really. If you'd like to know more about what fabrics I recommend and how to break down clothing, check out my other YouTube videos because they've got step-by-steps for that. But for the moment, what I'm working with is a blank bit of fabric that has no seams left on it, no hems, things like that. And it doesn't have to be a regular shape. So the first step is to fold your fabric in half. Fold it in half the same direction again, and the same direction again, until you get a lovely little tube. I could probably fold that one more time. I'm going to weigh it down actually with my rag rug gauge so that it doesn't flop up at me. And then I'm going to cut my strips for loopy rag rugging by cutting through lots of layers of fabric at the same time. So it's really important that you have a good pair of scissors for this. So I actually use rag rug scissors because they're made to go through layers of fabric and they don't blunt over time, which is great. So the width that I'm cutting my strips by cutting through this tube is roughly 2 centimeters in width. I normally cut them between 1.5 to 2 centimeters, but depending on the thickness of your fabric, you either cut your strips a little bit narrower or a little bit wider. So generally the thicker your fabric is, the narrower you cut your strips, and the thinner your fabric is, the wider you can cut your strips. Basically, you want your fabric to be able to easily pass through the hessian, which is the base that we work on. In America, it's called burlap. It's exactly the same thing, so try not to get confused. But if you have a really thick fabric like denim and you cut your strips too wide, it makes it really difficult to pull through the hessian. So we compensate for added thickness by cutting our strips narrower. So I'm not going to do quite the whole bit of fabric here. But you can see when I open up my strip, it's a bit wonky, but it doesn't matter. It's all lovely and long and all a vaguely even width. So I'm now ready to loopy rag rug. So what I need is a rug hook. So we sell these on the Ragged Life website. They are probably the easiest and quickest way to do the loopy technique. Anyone who's followed me for a little while will know that I'm a huge fan of actually using the latch hook to do the loopy technique of rag rugging. And it still has a fond place in my heart, the latch hook. But what I've worked out from teaching thousands of people how to rag rug over the years is for a lot of people that dangly latch bit actually makes their life slightly harder and they can't quite make it work for them as it does for some people. So if you're one of those people who you've tried loopy rag rugging, perhaps you haven't got on as well with the latch hook as you were hoping, I would recommend trying a rug hook. The rug hook is designed to smoothly pass through the hessian without catching on any of the bits. The hook itself is quite deep, which means you can work with lots of different thicknesses of fabric, everything from thick blanket yarns like this one here, up to really thin fabrics like chiffon or lace. I really like it because it's just really ergonomic in your hand and it feels really nice. And yeah, it's just a really nice option. So I'm going to get rag rugging now and let's get going. So once we've prepped our long strip, you want to hold one hand underneath the hessian and you want your hook from the front of the hessian. Wherever you want to go in the hessian, you poke down from the front to the back, so that your hook is on the back of the hessian. What you're doing is then placing the strip into the hook, and from the front you're just pulling normally an end through to the top, and then normally I pull that end to whatever height I want to rag rug at, because you can make your loops really nice and long, like in this little sampler here, or you can make them really short, like over this side of the sampler. And you can see you can do any height in between as well. But when you're a beginner, it's sometimes easier to leave that end a little bit longer and trim it later on, so that you don't accidentally end up pulling it through to the underside. Then you miss out 2 strands in the hessian and go from the front to the back again. You then wind the strip around the hook, and all of this you normally do without looking at the back of the hessian. You'll get your eye in after a while, and you're just pulling a little bobble through to the top. And that is your first bit of loopy rag rugging, so you can pat yourself on the back. You then miss out 2 strands again, grab onto the strip and pull another little loop to the top. When you get your eye in, as I said, you're almost feeding the strip into the hook without looking. So I can do this quite quick. And as with any craft like knitting or crochet, once you work out how to feed the strip underneath the hessian, you're onto an absolute winner. When you work out, okay, I've had enough of this particular colour, I want to change colour, or maybe you just run out of strip, the way that you finish a row is you miss out 2 strands in the hessian, go from the front to the back, grab onto your strip as you've been doing before, but you pull all of the excess through to the top, and you trim your rag rugging, your first end and your last end, to the same height as all of your loops are at. So those ends become completely disguised. The back of your rag rugging should always be lovely and flat. You don't want any lumps and bumps coming through to the bottom like this. If at any stage you've got any lumps like this, you want to just make sure that you pull them through to the top of the hessian. And you can do this by kind of just easing the fabric through from the bottom to the top. And I often then behead my loop to almost just completely fix it. But ideally you want to get so good at rag rugging that you just don't end up with those bits on the back. So when you start a new strip, ideally you start it in the same hole that you just finished in. So I would go in the same hole that my single end is in. Once again, go from the front to the back, grab onto my strip, pull an end through to the top, and then continue on. And you basically just keep missing out 2 strands between one loop and the next. It's very simple once you get into a rhythm. I always get a few questions on what stops the rag rugging from falling out. Well, it's all to do with the tension at which you rag rug. If you rag rug your loops close enough together, the hessian begins to tighten up, and that's what locks the loops in so they don't fall out. If, once you've got a bit of rag rugging in, things get pulled from the front, it can maybe pull one loop out, but it can't pull the whole strip out, and you can then fix those bits. So with loopy rag rugging, you always want to make sure that there aren't any strands of hessian visible between your loops. So if you rag rug too far away from your previous loop, say I missed out 5 strands, what you get is this little bit of hessian showing. If you notice things like that happening, just adjust your spacing a bit and move in a bit closer. And that is essentially how to do it. And when you want to finish, you pull your end through to the top and you trim it off. So what you can see is you don't even have to go in a particularly straight line. You can change direction, you can spiral, you can follow any shape that you sketch onto the hessian, And what you'll see from the back is the hessian begins to tighten around your rag rug loops. So basically that is how to loopy rag rug with a rug hook. If you'd like to see more of my tutorial videos on how to perhaps do the shaggy technique or some of my troubleshooting videos, then do follow us at Ragged Life. I've been Elspeth Jackson. Do give us a follow and a like if you like this video, and happy rag rugging. Thanks for watching.